Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a source that makes a pretty startling claim. It argues there's this silent, unelected power out there that's basically running the whole global economy and in the process creating a kind of modern financial slavery. So let's get right into it and see how they make their case. So, the source we're looking at today starts with this really vivid image of the US Federal Reserve. Forget armies or politicians. The book wants you to picture a conductor of an orchestra. A quiet conductor whose tiniest move with their baton can direct the dance of trillions of dollars all around the world. Modern white-collar slavery. I mean, that's a pretty heavy phrase, right? The source is quick to point out we're not talking about literal chains here. It's about something more subtle, a country losing its economic freedom, where its entire future can be decided by a quiet meeting happening thousands of miles away. Okay, so to really get this, we've got to look at the engine room of this whole system. The source calls it the gravity of the financial world. All right, the interest rate. Most of us just think of it as, the number on our mortgage or car loan. But this text says, nope, think bigger. It asks us to see it as a fundamental law of economic physics. So when the US Fed changes this one little number, it's like they're literally fiddling with the gravitational pull of the entire financial universe. And here's how that ripple effect actually works. It's a perfect chain reaction. The Fed makes a move in Washington, D.C., but that decision absolutely does not stay put. It shoots out across the globe, acting like a giant magnet, pulling money out of other countries and sending it rushing back into the US. Okay, so that raises a huge question, right? Why? Why does a decision made in the US have that much influence? Well, according to our source, it all boils down to one absolutely critical factor. And this is really the bedrock of the whole argument. It's all about dollar dominance. You see, the most important stuff in the world, especially oil, is almost always bought and sold in US dollars. This means every single country, no matter how big or small, has to keep a big pile of dollars on hand just to participate in the global economy. This creates this constant, built-in demand for the dollar, and the source calls this America's exorbitant privilege. And this slide just lays out the core imbalance so clearly. Think about it. If the US gets into debt, it owes money in its own currency. It can literally just print more dollars to pay it off. But if, say, Argentina owes $1 billion, they can't print dollars. They have to earn them on the global market. It's a safety net for one and a potential trap for everyone else. So, now we see the imbalance. Let's look at how this plays out in the real world, how it creates what the source calls that slavery mechanic. This example from 2013 is just wild. The Fed didn't even do anything. They just hinted that maybe someday they might slow things down. And that single whisper was enough to cause a full-blown panic. Investors yanked their money out of emerging markets like Brazil and Turkey, and boom, their currencies just crashed. And this is where the source says the real pain comes in. It's this double whammy effect. So imagine a country owes a bunch of money in dollars. When the dollar gets stronger, two terrible things happen at once. First, their existing debt just got way more expensive to pay back in their own currency. And second, their own currency is now worth less, which leads to massive inflation at home. It's like being squeezed from both sides in a devastating economic vice. So when a nation is caught in this downward spiral, its currency is in free fall, its debts are ballooning, what can they do? Well, often, there's only one door they can knock on for a lifeline. And that door leads to the International Monetary Fund, or the IMF. They get a bailout, a loan to stay afloat. But, and this is a huge but, according to the source, that help doesn't come for free. It comes with, well, invisible chains. Yeah, so in exchange for that loan, the IMF often requires some pretty harsh conditions. The source calls it the IMF chain. Things like deep cuts to social programs. We're talking health, education. Privatizing national assets, which often get snapped up by foreign investors. And basically giving up control over their own economic destiny. The loan becomes a leash. So this whole process really makes you step back and ask a fundamental question about who's actually in charge, right? Who's accountable here? And the source dives right into that.
And here's the kicker, according to the text. The people making these decisions that can literally make or break entire countries, people on, say, the Fed's Open Market Committee, they're not elected. You and I don't vote for them. They have very little democratic accountability to the millions of people their actions affect. So you have this major conflict. A country's fate isn't being decided by its own elected government, but by a small group of unelected technocrats.
So if that's the system as the source describes it, is there any way out? Does it offer any solutions for how to break these so-called chains?
It actually does. The text lays out this pretty clear three-step strategy for independence. First, it says nations should start trading with each other using their own currencies, bypassing the dollar altogether. Second, they should diversify their savings, hold gold or other currencies, not just dollars. And third, and this is a big one, they need to be really disciplined and avoid taking on huge amounts of debt in a currency they can't control.
In the end, the source's main point is this. This silent system of control only works because most people don't know it exists. It thrives in the shadows. So, just understanding how it works, dragging it out into the light, that's the first, most powerful step. After all, you can't really change the game until you understand the rules.
And that's the final, really challenging question the source leaves us chewing on. Is just knowing how the system works enough to break free? Or does it take more than that? Does it take a fundamental shift in who holds the raw power on the world stage?